customization is such an important part of the process here at Ping. So we've got Colton Tuttle, master fitter at Ping Proving Grounds, to walk us through a custom PLD putter fitting and what this process looks like, because consumers can actually pay to come here and go through a full customization, a full fitting, and then get an exact putter to their needs, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I want to show everybody what this looks like. We're going to go through the whole process. We'll show on the app all the numbers, all the data that we're going to look at. How do we start this process? When someone comes in, where does it even start?
Yeah, so first thing we like to do is just get a feel for where a player is in their putting. If it's a strength, if it's a weakness. If it is a weakness, where do they struggle? If that's more oriented to speed or direction, try to get a feel for what that player's needs are and where our opportunities are to help them.
Okay. Does anybody say it's a strength?
Some do.
I'd like
some
to
do.
meet that person.
Yeah, some do. But most of the time, that's what we're here for.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, where are we going to start? I've got an answer D in my hand.
And this is nothing more than just to get us a baseline. So,
Okay.
when we're starting this process, we just want to get some baseline numbers to kind of get an understanding of what your patterns are and what we need to build for you.
Okay. So we're going to start by hitting some putts?
Yes, absolutely. So let's start with just having you warm up here. We're just going to have you get a few to get used to the speed.
Sure.
We're going to hit a 10-foot putt here.
Okay.
On this surface, it does roll about 11.
Okay.
And once you have that speed down, we're going to hook you up to iPing and get some data.
Okay.
Are there any missed tendencies for yourself?
Yeah, anything but in the hole.
Okay. Do you struggle more with speed, direction? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think it's more speed, consistency with speed.
Okay.
It's really gauging how far to hit it. I know this can't really help with the putter, but I do tend to. I feel like I'm not reading greens properly, but I do feel like when I do make contact at impact, the face is where I want it to be.
Okay.
So I know you can't cure the reading greens part, but I don't really feel like rotation is an issue at impact.
Okay. Pretty good on direction.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Terrific. Let's see just a couple more and we'll jump into this. Nice putt.
Thank you. If you can just say that a little louder into the microphone.
Exactly. What kind of green speeds do you typically play on?
Not this fast.
Okay.
We're in Michigan, so it can vary. But I would say moderate to fast.
Okay. Some variation there though?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Let's get those balls back and start getting some numbers and figure out what we need to do.
Okay.
So we're going to hook you up to a proprietary app now called iPing 2.0.
Okay.
What we're using is the gyroscope and the accelerometer in this iPod Touch to measure the forces, torques, and accelerations that you impart on the putter. Then we can kind of work backwards from that direction to figure out what your needs are when it comes to building a putter.
Sure. Okay.
All right. So we're going to have you hit 5 putts, that same target here. And all I want you to do is just focus on the consistency of your stroke. We'll take care of the rest.
Okay. And so this hooks up right to the shaft here, and it's going to read everything for us.
Yeah, anyone with access to iOS or the Apple App Store can download this and use this software. So it gives our accounts and then consumers access to some pretty high-level stuff to help inform them on what they might need in a putter.
So if someone wants to go through the customization process, they can't make it to Scottsdale out here to Ping.
Yeah.
They can do a virtual fitting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big option for us. So we can send these kits out to people, have them collect some different putting sessions, and they can then upload that data to our servers for Alex and myself to interpret, and then we can sit down and have a Zoom meeting with them and talk through the data and what they might want to consider in a putter.
Jeez, technology is a crazy thing.
It's
isn't
great.
It? What a great opportunity, too, because I think with a lot of consumers, the putter, I think, is often the overlooked club for fitting.
Yeah, it's not as glamorous, I think, for a lot of people as, bombing their drives, but we encourage people to think about it differently because over half your shots typically are coming with a putter, so there is a lot of opportunity there.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of people just think it's just a piece of metal and there's not a lot of technology in there, but there really is. And when I imagine we're going to see it in a little bit, at impact there's loft, and it's not just a flat piece of metal.
There's a lot of things that are happening with how that putter moves that people might not be aware of.
Right.
All right, nice stroke.
Thank you. Yeah, we do putter fittings at Carl's Golfland as well, and it's always fascinating. I think watching the consumer go through that and how eye-opening it is for them to see, oh, some of this isn't just my fault.
Right.
Same thing with what you mentioned, driver. It can be you just need to be in the right putter.
That's our favorite part of what we do is kind of that aha moment with people when we get them into something that actually works. All right, really nice. Let me pop this iPod off of here and we can take a look at this screen and kind of comb through this initial data and what this all means up here. So
Yep.
I'm gonna grab a couple putters for illustration purposes here. So there's a lot of numbers going on up here, but the first thing that we start with looking at with any player is this bottom left number here in this putting handicap. We're measuring how you move the putter, but we're also concerned with how consistent you are as a player in applying those same forces from one putt to the next.
Okay.
So that handicap score is effectively your consistency. The better that handicap, the more consistent of a putting stroke you have. So plus 0.4, there's a lot of things that you do very well in a very consistent and repeatable manner, which is great. That makes our job a lot easier and we can be a little more decisive on the direction we go.
I don't know if that makes me feel good or bad that I'm missing so many putts.
Well, we have opportunities here,
Sure,
so this is encouraging, certainly. So if we're looking at what we're measuring with iPing, these 5 data points and averages, what we're seeing in these green boxes are, again, the things that you do very well. Those are consistency scores for each of those metrics.
Okay.
In general, anything in green are the things that you're doing very well and very consistently. Yellow suggests there is some variability. If there was anything red up there, we'd probably be having more of a conversation about your putting stroke rather than what we can change through a putter.
Sure. Okay.
Let's start from the top down here and kind of focus on these averages and talk about what these mean.
Okay.
So when we look at closing angle at 3.7 degrees, we are measuring how much rotation you're applying to the face of the putter from the top of the backstroke down into impact. We're not necessarily looking at the path or the visual arc, although there can be a correlation. We're really just looking at this motion right here, applied torque to the face.
Sure.
Now, most people in general tend to fit within a window between 3.5 and 7.5 degrees of that measured rotation.
Okay.
And this is kind of what we're using to assess toe hang on a putter. And if that's not something you're familiar with, we can take a moment to go over that here.
Yeah.
So we have putters like this DS72 that we would consider face balanced, where the face of that putter points straight up towards the sky. Putters like that Answer D you're holding, this Answer I'm holding here, will have a more moderate amount of toe hang, where the toe falls towards the ground. Other putters will have more severe amounts of that.
Sure.
So when we're changing that toe hang by changing this neck style or how that shaft interacts with the putter head, we're influencing how fast or how slow that putter head wants to deliver itself. So for instance, with this face balance putter, we point this shaft axis right through the middle of the putter face, and that axis is also the point that everything is rotating around. So with a face balance putter, we have an equal weight that sits on both sides of that point of rotation.
Sure.
With a putter with more toe hang, we start to point that axis more towards the heel of the putter and position more of the total head weight outside of that axis, which is why you see that weight pull that toe down.
Sure.
In understanding that, we can look at toe hang in a couple of different ways.
Okay.
As we increase toe hang, we actually start to slow the delivery of the putter face because now you as the golfer are responsible for rotating and closing more of that mass. Whereas a putter that is face balanced, that has less mass outside that point, is actually going to be a little bit more pull bias for a player in relation to something with more toe hang.
Okay.
So we can do a few things with that. We can start to influence your missed tendencies. So for instance, if you tend to pull putts, we might lean towards something with more toe hang. If you tend to push putts, we might reduce the toe hang relative to that putter. But in a broader sense, what we want to do is match up that toe hang with the amount of measured force that we get here. So with 3.7 degrees measured here, it's a fairly neutral number. So when it comes to toe hang, we'll likely want to identify models that have a neutral amount of toe hang so that we can make sure you're hitting your intended line.
Yeah.
All right. So next on this list here is impact angle, and this positive 0.4 of a degree indicates that you deliver the putter face on average about 0.4 of a degree open relative to the address position.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you're pushing all of your putts by about 0.5 degree. This, more than anything, shows us your aim tendencies and suggests that you're likely a little bit of a leftward aimer who delivers the face slightly open to that position to hit your intended line. Now, our goal when we're looking at impact angle isn't necessarily to zero you out or get you perfect. We do want you to be somewhat close to neutral, but we're more focused on the consistency of that impact angle.
Sure.
And that consistency score is a really good indicator of how much you're working against that putter. So the truth is, I could give you something completely face balanced. I could give you something with 90 degrees of hang. Within a series of 4 or 5 putts, you're going to begin to adapt to that putter.
Yeah.
Whether that means starting to fight rotation or having to apply more. But when I put the responsibility on you to have to time that up and manipulate the putter, that's where we're going to start to see a lot of inconsistency creep into the delivered face angle, because it's just never going to work as repeatably as something that complements your natural patterns there.
Sure.
So we're in a pretty good position there with the impact angle. We're likely going to want to stay with something that is pretty neutral in terms of the toe hang there.
Okay.
All right. Next on here is tempo. That 2.2 is a time ratio. So we're measuring the length of your backstroke in milliseconds and dividing it by the length of the downswing into impact. And this shows us how you accelerate the putter, whether you're someone who's a little more slow and deliberate, maybe a little more quick and abrupt, or more neutral. Most people do tend to fit within a window between 1.8 and 2.2.
Okay.
So you're right there, and we do typically see about 1,000 milliseconds as a general kind of neutral stroke time from here. So,
Okay.
Very neutral in terms of the acceleration of your stroke. And we're using this to kind of cue into head weights with a player, how much or how little we want to see. For players who have a more neutral stroke, well, let's actually look at the extremes. If we have someone who's very slow and deliberate,
Yep.
we oftentimes want to put them in slightly heavier heads, because over the course of that longer and more fluid, deliberate stroke, that weight begins to act as a stabilizer. It makes that face less susceptible to twisting, and we might see more stability. But if we have someone who is very quick and very abrupt, that weight can start to work against what their needs are, because if we have a very rapid acceleration with the handle in that transition and a lot of weight to move at the bottom, we can start to create a disconnect between the two ends of the putter.
Sure.
And see some inconsistencies. So something neutrally weighted, or traditionally weighted, probably something around 350, maybe to 365 grams is probably that window we'd want to look at for you.
Okay.
But with that said, there's a little more to this.
Yeah.
If a player struggles with direction, oftentimes heavier head weights can benefit that player, because, again, it just makes that putter less likely to be manipulated.
Sure.
But if a player struggles with speed control or lag putting, the more weight we begin to give a player and then start to take them further away from the hole, eventually that weight is going to start to work against a player's ability to make accurate perceptions of ball speed and distance control. So
I think that's where I lie.
Okay.
Too. I've noticed that with heavier putters that I've tried, or even just full-on mallets.
Mm-hmm.
If I've got a longer putt, I don't know. I can't gauge it properly.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure, and that makes sense. So with that in mind, we might want to be cautious of how much weight we consider for you,
Okay.
and maybe lean towards the more kind of traditional end of the spectrum to make sure we give you the best ability to control speed as we get you further away from the hole.
Okay, great.
All right. Next thing is lie angle here. So that 21.7 degrees is just measuring the shaft plane here. Now, a lot of people are familiar with a 70-degree lie angle on a putter.
Sure.
A 20-degree lie angle, which is ping standard, refers to the same position. The difference is that we are measuring from the vertical position at 90 degrees down to the shaft. 70 degrees would be measuring from the horizontal position up.
Sure. Yep.
So when we measure that, we see that you deliver it at about 22 degrees, which means if we give you a putter that has a standard lie angle, that toe of the putter is about 2 degrees off the ground at impact.
Okay.
So to compensate for that, we'll consider going a little bit flatter on the lie angle. We are going to look at length with you as well, and depending on if we go a little bit longer or shorter, we might make some adjustments to that.
Okay.
But in general, we do like to get the sole of the putter nice and neutral to the ground to give you the best opportunity to make centered contact with the putter. So
Yep.
something a little bit flatter is likely going to be in your best interest there.
Okay.
And the last thing we see is a little bit of forward shaft lean at impact for you. You have about 2.5 degrees of forward shaft lean, which is going to de-loft the putter. So most putters that we make off the rack are going to come around 3 degrees of loft, which is a really nice kind of window for that delivered loft at impact. But if you do have that forward shaft lean and are taking loft out of the putter, you might want to add some back in, because if you're not delivering enough loft to the ball, we're going to see a tendency for you to start to drive that ball down and into the green,
Yes.
which will cause the ball to bounce and bobble. It will take away that initial ball speed pretty quickly, and also create some inconsistency in how that ball rolls.
Yeah.
So likely if you are struggling with speed, that's probably what it's attributed to. And giving you a little more loft should help elevate that ball over the grass and get it rolling end over end in a slightly more consistent and ideal way.
That's great. It's more than a piece of flat metal.
Yes,
A
yeah.
lot goes into this. Okay,
Quite a bit.
so based on those numbers, where should we go from here?
So again, we're going to want to identify models for you that have a pretty neutral amount of toe hang
Okay.
to help optimize the direction and the consistency at which you deliver the face. When looking at those models, I want to be cautious of not giving you too much head weight, because as we start to give you more weight, you're going to struggle more with that speed. And then from there, we just adjust the loft and the lie to fit your needs. So I think honestly, a traditional answer putter would fit you very nicely. A nice amount of toe hang, a traditional head weight. We give you a little more loft and maybe flatten the lie angle out of touch as well.
Let's try it.
All right, perfect.
So Colton, before we try the answer, before we get into a putter suggestion, you mentioned that the toe was up, and we had talked about length of putter as well. And I noticed there my eyes are not directly over the ball, standing probably a little bit far away. Toe is up. What do we do to correct that?
Yeah, we're gonna look at something a little shorter for you. Maybe take some of the length out of there. In general, what we want to see is when we're looking at you down the line, we want to position those eyes either over the ball or just slightly inside that line over the hosel. If your eyes get too far away from that ball or too far to the inside, increasingly the hole is actually going to start to appear more out to the right. And at a certain point, most players will almost start to steer their putting strokes to where their eyes are telling them what the hole is. So I'm just trying to put you in a nice neutral position and give your brain the best opportunity to make a good read.
Okay, so what's the suggestion from there? We're going to shorten the putter down?
Yep, absolutely. So we had you at 35 inches. Before we start testing this answer here, I'm going to take you down to 34 inches.
Okay.
See what that does to your eye line. And you just kind of cue me in on your comfortability at that length.
Sure.
And then we'll get some more numbers on it from there.
Okay, sounds good.
What this should also do when we're shortening the putter is we should start delivering that lie angle slightly flatter as well.
Okay.
Length and lie kind of go hand in hand.
Okay. Feel-wise, I can already tell the difference. I feel like, I don't know if it's going to show up on video, but I feel like I'm way more over the ball.
Perfect. Let's take a look. Let's get some video here. Let's see a few more putts there.
Okay.
From a comfortability standpoint, it feels pretty natural to you?
Yep.
Okay.
I was just going to say, feel-wise, too, coming off the face, it feels pretty good.
Good.
That was probably a bad stroke.
Okay, let's get one more there. Nice putt. Okay, so let's take a look at the video here and take you to the address position. Set you up here. So we saw before those eyes were sitting quite a bit to the inside of where we'd want to see them.
Yep.
Just a little bit, and we do like you to be somewhat on the inside, just not excessively. Okay. That's really nice right there.
Way better,
So
yeah.
eyes are right over the hosel now.
Yep.
And that's where the action's happening. That's where the point that that head is rotating around. Perfect position there.
Okay.
So as long as that feels comfortable from a fitting standpoint, we like you at 34 quite a bit more than where you were at 35.
It felt, just even from a feel perspective, I felt more comfortable like I was in over the putt rather than a little bit further away.
And that's equally important here. I never want to adjust length so much where you feel like you have to start to reach for the putter or get kind of tucked into yourself there. So I think it's a win on both sides, and we'll put you at 34 inches moving forward here.
Sounds great.
All right, okay, so we're going to have you do the same drill here. Just hit 5 more putts for me. Very nice. Good putts here. I'm going to take that off, and let's take a look at how these numbers stack up and how they compare.
All
same,
green.
Yeah, same overall consistency. We were able to improve on that shaft lean and get that a little bit tighter.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Let's take a look at what we're seeing and kind of comb through this here.
Okay.
Perfect. So we're comparing that first putter on the left to what we ended up in on the right here. A lot of things going on here. So same overall consistency, but what I'm happy with is you're more consistent in the areas that matter the most. So first thing we look at there is that impact angle, that consistency of where you're delivering the putter face. We go from a 4.5 to a +5 basically on a handicap scale, so quite a bit more consistent.
Yeah.
And we can look at that as direction. The more consistent that delivery of face, the more predictably you're going to hit your intended line.
Sure.
Another thing that we like there is that consistency of shaft lean. We go from 5.3 to 1.4, and we can look at that as our speed. Even if you are delofting the putter still a little bit, if there's variability in that delivered loft, you're going to see differences in that launch angle, ball speed, and spin rate. And all of those things kind of work in harmony to determine how far the ball is going to roll, even if the club head speed stays the same. So if we can get that more consistently, we start to see a more consistent ability for you to control speed. A lot of things to like here. Now, interestingly, when we did take you from 35 to 34, we are still seeing the lie angle delivered a little bit up right there. So we're still going to want to go ahead and flatten that putter out a little bit for you.
Okay.
I'm going to start you at a degree, though.
Okay.
The tricky thing with lie angle is we don't want to make these huge adjustments.
Sure.
Because at a certain point, if we make that putter too flat, it's going to begin to look toe down to you as the player. And at a certain point, you might start to lower your hands to get the putter head back into a spot that looks normal to you.
Yeah.
And the last thing that we want through a fitting is for you to start to make adjustments to your setup based on what you're seeing visually. So
Right.
I think we go a degree flat. You're not de-lofting the putter as much with this, which makes sense with a slightly lighter head weight. But we do still probably want to give you some additional loft. So
Okay.
about a degree flat, 3.5 degrees of loft is where we'd put you here, but everything else looks outstanding.
Awesome. All those options, a ton of options to think about, but I think the main part of this is customizing the putter to fit the golfer and their needs. It's such a huge part of the process here for you all at Ping. The PLD custom putting process, you can do it in person, you can also do it virtually. Whether you do it in person or virtually, very, very highly recommended. An awesome process, an awesome offering here at Ping.